better business, and a better life begin here. Welcome to Business is Art on True Chat with author and business consultant, John Umstead.
Hey, thank you for tuning in today. Hey, are you ready for change? Well, if not, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our guest is Rob Deptford. He is the founder of Forge Ahead Coaching. We'll get to Rob in just a moment, but before we do, I would like to invite you all to connect with me directly, personally. Reach out to me at John Umstead. That's JONUMSTEAD. On Twitter, you can find me rather easily on LinkedIn, or you can go out to my website, plancanvas.net, where you can learn a little bit about the software Plan Canvas, as well as my consulting services. But do reach out to me. Love to hear from you. But in the meantime, let's get this show underway. Again, we're going to be talking about hey, are you ready? Are you ready for some change? And we're going to be talking with an expert on this. His name is Rob Deptford again, and he is the founder of Forge Ahead Coaching. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Oh, hey, John. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it very much. Hey, before we get into the topic at hand, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, sure. Boy, where to begin? It's interesting because, tell me about yourself is one of the questions that comes up a lot in job interviews. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's what I do is career coaching, right? Uh-huh. So I should have a good answer to this. But from the perspective of how I got into this kind of work, I had a taste of career coaching to start with in 2001 when I was part of a pilot project with a small community college and the federal government of Canada at the time. It was Human Resources Development Canada, where we set out to work with underprivileged youth and try to give them some life skills, including some work experience. And I got involved in that, sort of by accident. I was doing some marketing work for the college, and, my boss at the time said, "Hey, Rob, have you ever done any teaching or coaching or anything like that?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." And she said, "Well, would you like to try?" and so, me being young and ambitious, and somewhat naive, I'd have to say, but I said, "Sure, let's give it a shot." And I found it very rewarding. And I've kind of been in and out of career coaching ever since in different parts of my meandering career, much of which was spent in the post-secondary system. So fast forward to today, mm-hmm. Now I'm doing a lot of outplacement work, meeting with people who are unfortunately in a layoff situation and helping them transition. And that's kind of the bulk of my business now.
Okay, great. And hey, I'd like to throw in a couple of things for any of our listeners out there, and also to see what your thoughts are on it, Rob. But, coaching and consulting, that's something that I wanted to do. Also, I went a little bit of a different path than you. I had a corporate career for a number of years. I had some really good consultants working for me. I had some really good coaches that worked with me. Some were both. There can be a little bit of a difference between a consultant and a coach, but the point is I had a lot of that kind of help. I also had a lot of mentors through my career, and so I reached a point where that's what I wanted to do, was to give back in that same kind of way that those types of services were given to me or provided to me. But what I've also come to appreciate over the years, probably more so than at the point where I actually launched into consulting work, is that you don't have to be a quote unquote consultant or a coach professionally to be one to someone. And I just would like for everyone to really think about that. You can be a coach or a consultant or a mentor in any type of role. Yeah,
I agree. And the conversation comes up amongst the coaching community a fair bit, in that, there is this distinction between coaching and consulting and mentorship. Coaches, really good coaches, are good at coaching. They don't have to have an expertise in a particular field to be good at coaching. And their job really is to sort of help you tap into your own resourcefulness, right? Whereas a consultant or a mentor mm-hmm. is teaching you and giving you advice and kind of helping you in that way. And it's a different modality. So there is a distinction, but many of us who are doing this kind of work are certainly doing some combination.
All right. So, hey, with that said, tell us a little bit about Forge Ahead Coaching.
Well, Forge Ahead, I started off talking about how I got into this outplacement work. And that was sort of by accident, to be honest with you. And the way it worked was I was working in a full-time position in the post-secondary sector, and my position at the time was eliminated. So I experienced an unplanned career transition of my own. And at the time, I had been planning to do some more formal training in coaching specifically. And so I went and I did that and got a coaching certificate, and through the process met some people who turned out to be really important people in my network and future colleagues, as it turned out, who at one point, as in the local market here, we started going through a bit of an economic downturn and seeing some increased demand for outplacement consulting. A friend from class just called me up and said, "Hey, Rob, there's a lot of people being laid off and we need some help." And they asked me to come and contract my services to a local talent management firm who was quite involved in that process. And in order to do that, I needed to have a company set up so I could invoice them. And so Forge Ahead Coaching was kind of born out of that need to do that. And that was in 2014. And as time progressed, and I started looking at how can I expand my services and tap into other markets, it's kind of worked out that it's grown as a business, and it's kind of its own entity now, rather than just a mechanism to be able to contract my services.
I'd like to ask a question, but let me set it up first. So a lot of coaching services, not all, but a lot of them will base their coaching on some kind of formal teachings or philosophies that might be widely known or maybe even narrowly known. As an example, last week I went to a seminar down in the Cincinnati, Ohio area that a coaching firm was putting on, and their services are very much centered on Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And the philosophies that are kind of relative to that, very much based in that. Other coaching services are very much based in perhaps another author or business leader of some sort. Are yours based in any kind of specific set of theories or philosophies, or is it more of your own?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. And incidentally, I love Think and Grow Rich. It's a book that sits on my shelf and will be there probably forever. I often refer back to it, and I think it's a terrific resource. Mm-hmm. But my coach training specifically is in solution-focused coaching. And a lot of the principles, many of them, it was an Erickson program. So a lot of the principles were based on Milton Erickson and some of his work. But the idea being that we're all resourceful, we all make the best choices available to us at the time. And there's this set of principles that Milton Erickson kind of developed, and so that would be where the exploration piece of my career coaching is kind of rooted, I suppose. And then as we get to the point where people are kind of in a position where they've decided what they want to do, and we can move forward with some strategy, it really is more customized, right? It's what do you want to do? Why is it important? How are we going to match up with your values? What is the plan of action here now to take the next steps? And it honestly, it gets into the tools, the resume and the cover letter and the interview process and all of that.
Yeah, interesting. I appreciate you letting me ask that question. It's just something that I've thought about a lot lately here myself, because I've seen both, and they both can be successful. And I shouldn't say normally. A lot of what I do see are in my own services included. They are kind of a hodgepodge of various teachings and philosophies that are in harmony with one another, and so you can bring them together in order to kind of bring some of the best of both worlds. So if you were to have asked me that same question, I probably would have had a very hard time answering it, just because of that. My services tend to be based more on, like I said, a hodgepodge of things that I have learned and studied over the years, formally and informally, as well as my own experiences. But I don't think there's one right answer to that question that I posed to you. I think it's just, to the client, what works for you, what draws you in. And Anyway, just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So I appreciate you.
Well, I was having a
that.
similar conversation earlier today about this actually. And my opinion on this is, for people like me, especially who have had quite a meandering career with a diversity of experiences, what the benefit of that is you have a lot of tools in your toolbox to offer. And so I really think it's an advantage to be able to work with a client and tap into all of those tools depending on what their individual needs are.
Yeah, it can be. Like I said, it depends on the situation, depends on the client. And the great news is there's a little something for everyone out there, right? So, again, thanks for letting me ask that. Hey, I want to remind our listeners though, to join this discussion, if you would please. You can find TrueChat on social media at TrueChat.org. That's TrueChat.org, or again, reach out to me directly on Twitter at John Umstead. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can be ready for change. And again, our guest is Rob Deptford. He's the founder of Forge Ahead Coaching. And we've kind of settled the background stuff, Rob. So let's do Forge Ahead, if I may, and get into a little bit more. So you wrote an article that you shared with me, or a blog post that you shared with me, and that you've used as sort of a backdrop for some speaking engagements, speaking with audiences, but it's entitled "Work is Different Now. Are you ready?" What do you mean when you say that work is different now?
Well, it's a very different environment than the one our parents grew up in. Let's put it that way. And so the concept really is, the idea of work, post World War II, right? When companies were growing, there was an unprecedented period of economic growth. The values were a little bit different at that time, and there was some incentive to sort of, bring people into organizations to help them grow. And at that time, because of that, there was a desire to sort of be, part of the social safety net, let's say. So work was a different experience for previous generations. You could expect to go in and have a fairly linear career path, often with the same company for your entire 35 or 40-year career. And we know that things are changing. We've got rapid change in technology. We've got changing values as generations turn over, and a number of other factors that are playing into both the needs of employees and some of the change that they would like to see, but also the needs of companies. And so, for example, we've seen over the last century or so that the lifespan of a company has shrunk by nearly 50 years. And so when we look at statistics and we see that people are changing jobs every 2 to 4 years on average now, well, it's easy to look at that and say, oh, people are job hopping, but it's not necessarily the case. It's change happening in companies too. So the question is, we know the environment is different. How do we prepare ourselves for that? And be prepared to navigate this, what is really a new world of work and a much more precarious world of work.
Yeah, perfect lead into the next question that I was going to ask you, because that title, Work is Different Now, Are You Ready? It's a question, right? And so are you ready? If you're not ready, well, that implies you're going to have to go through some changes yourself. So the business world is changing, society is changing, all of those things are changing. So what kinds of changes should people be making or ready to make, and how do they go about doing it?
Well, the biggest thing is change, right? Change itself is a constant because of all of these environmental factors and other things. We have to be prepared to adapt. And I see this in my local market here, having gone through an economic downturn. What I've observed is this change on the company side of things has been really amplified in that not only are companies restructuring in order to kind of get themselves into survival mode and move forward, but in doing that, they're also setting up their structure to perform well in the future and be able to be nimble and quickly adapt to changes in the market or changes in technology or anything else that comes down the pipeline. So, if companies are doing this, I think we can safely assume that we as employees have to be doing this as well. And so adaptability and being prepared to make a rapid change, is something that we need to really be considering.
Yeah. And I just had this experience yesterday, which kind of leads me to a next question that I'd like to ask you. But so let me build to it. So I'm teaching a course at a small university, and the classes are small, eight or nine kids per class. But one in particular on organizational development. We went through an exercise where where everyone went through the Myers-Briggs, test. Have you ever done that yourself?
I'm an INTP, if that means anything to you.
So you have done it yourself. All right. So these kids, most of them, I think a couple had done it a few years ago for another course, but the rest of them had never done it before. So it was a first time experience for them. And of the 9 or so kids that we have in the class, we probably ended up with, it was only 24 hours ago. I should remember exactly, but it was 4 or 5 different personality types. And each of them went through and talked about what type they were and did they agree with it? Why not? And those sorts of things. And one of the questions that I had for each of them was, okay, now imagine that someone that is the polar opposite of your personality type is communicating with you. How do you want them to communicate? How would you best receive their communications? And every single one of them, regardless of their type, every one of them said that they just wanted people to be direct, just get to the point. Don't sugarcoat anything. And they all 100% down the line added, and I want to know why you're asking anything of me or whatever you're promoting. I want to know why. And it was, I'm not sure, Rob, if 20 years ago we would have had a sampling of different personality types in the room. I'm not sure that every single one of the individuals would have said that being direct is important to me and telling me why something is important is something that I'm looking for. I don't know. What's your experience been?
I think there's some, there are certainly some generalities that we see when we look at studies of the different habits of different generations, right? And I saw a lot of this earlier in my post-secondary career as the millennials were moving into post-secondary, and we were kind of preparing for that bombardment and the different values that they were bringing into that environment. And now, of course, many of them are in the workforce. That bubble is going to be, if not already, the largest portion of the workforce out there. And so it's a values thing. And where I think years ago, under different leadership styles, you might have had somebody ask someone to do something and there would be no question, right? It was just what you do. Whereas now there is a genuine value in an understanding of how does my contribution make a difference? And so I think that, it's one of the things that I talk with a lot with people who are in leadership roles. Are you able to really explain how everything you're doing fits into the bigger picture? Because in doing so, you're actually going to create some motivation for your team that has this value now in seeing that bigger picture.
Yeah. It's really very interesting to, I see it as a phenomenon. It's really a very interesting to me, phenomenon to witness, to be part of, and to learn from. Yesterday was as educational for me as, hopefully it was for the students in the room. And, to me, I think you said it, past generations, you didn't really ask. You were told to do something, you just did it. Jump.
Absolutely.
Okay, how high?
Yeah.
But now it's jump. Why? What? What's the purpose? What are you going to get out of my jump? What am I going to get out of my jump?
Exactly. Yeah. And so we need to be able to explain that with some clarity. And if we can, it actually serves us very well, because when we get that motivation, what happens is we end up building some trust. We build trust because we're sharing information that otherwise wouldn't have been shared in previous generations. It makes for a very different work environment, a very collaborative work environment. And that word collaboration tends to be a bit of a buzzword these days, I think, but it's what works well.
And it's one of the changes that many people have to make. They want to stay relevant in the workforce. Got to be able to make that shift. But speaking of sharing information, Rob, all of the podcasts on our network pursue a common goal. True Chat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations like this one. And if you have any ethical concerns with today's episode, please email ethics@truechat.org. Again, that's ethics@truechat.org. Okay, we're talking about change and getting ready for change. And again, our guest is Rob Deptford. He's the founder of Forge Ahead Coaching. So, Rob, go back, if you would, please. Tell us a little bit more about what your coaching services with respect to getting people ready for change are all about.
My focus, and I deliver most of my service online, with the exception of a little bit of work here in my local market. But my focus really is on people who are sort of mid-career and looking to advance or looking for maybe a complete change, so advancement or transition. And the idea in sort of helping people make that move, part of that is creating a customized program that includes some of the education around what's going to be needed to not only survive but thrive in this emerging new world of work, right? Where we've got a precarious environment and we've got options that didn't used to exist. Opt-in work, for example, things that people, in some cases, people actually want to do. And so, we're looking at really what are the values, what are the needs, what's the fit for a client? What kinds of environments do you thrive in? What are your best skills? We're looking at all of that, and we're looking at, okay, how can you apply that in a way that is going to be sustainable for you, and also, thinking about some ways that you could transfer that set of values and those skills should something happen and you do need to adapt.
How about in terms of social media and adapting their social media in general, as well as more specifically to professional website or to professional platforms like LinkedIn? How should folks either in transition or thinking about transition or who just want to stay relevant, how should they be approaching those platforms?
It's critical now. Really job search. The one thing that's changed really about job search is we've kind of flipped the tables a little bit, where it used to be about what you're looking for. And we used to advertise ourselves as looking for a particular opportunity. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people making still now. You still have an objective statement on your resume. And the problem with that is it's framed incorrectly. We need to be able to convey to a prospective employer that we're actually a service provider and we have a service and a value to offer. And how we market that includes having a strong online presence. So LinkedIn is a great example. Because that's really what the platform was built for, is to have this professional online presence, and it's really improved just in the last couple of years. It's not just sort of this place to store your digital resume anymore. You can publish articles on there, you can post on there. There's good engagement these days. You can really set yourself up to be positioned as a thought leader in your industry and get some attention that way and some traction in a job search.
Yeah. I consider my own LinkedIn profile to be a work in progress, always. And, I'm never satisfied with it. I'm always looking for how can I tweak it to really convey the types of message that I would like. And I think it's better than it probably used to be. Well, I know it's better than it used to be, but I used to be approached electronically all the time by would-be recruiters or actual recruiters, who would open up with, we came across your profile on LinkedIn and you seem like you'd be a fantastic candidate for this position we have open. And invariably it was 100% of the time an entry-level salesperson position. And there's nothing wrong with somebody filling that position and, but that was clearly not the message I was trying to connote with my own profile. So, I don't get those anymore. So I've at least graduated beyond that. But but listen, I'm never quite satisfied with it, and never quite sure if it is conveying the message that I really want it to or not.
Well, look, it really is kind of a dynamic, living, breathing digital document. If I look at my own profile and try to count how many times I've changed that in the past year, it's, I don't have enough fingers to count it, I'm sure. And that's okay. And we used to preach, you need to be changing your resume on a regular basis too, or at least keeping it up to date. And I don't think anybody does that. I think they just let it collect dust in a drawer someplace. But LinkedIn is the same. If you're not getting the results that you are targeting, that you would like to see, make the change, right? And experiment a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't cost anything but a little bit of time to do some experimentation. And I had another example just this week. An individual reached out to me and asked if I would write a referral on LinkedIn for her. And I'm not opposed to doing that for people, but this was someone who I've had no contact with over the last few years. Used to work within an organization that I led. Didn't really have day-to-day working relationship. I don't have any problem with anybody reaching out to me, but it was so I do want to preface it by saying that I encourage people to, whether I've got a great relationship with them or just, cursory, doesn't matter. But it just came so bluntly, hey, would you write a reference for me, a referral for me? And, and sure enough, kind of to your point, right directly on the profile, that right at the top, looking for opportunities. And I don't know, it didn't feel right to me. I can't explain to you why, but maybe I don't know, maybe you can help me understand why that it didn't upset me. It just didn't make me want to do anything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's really, I think it's a case of, the person in question should be asking somebody more appropriate for a reference. And it works for references in the application process or the competition process as well. There's nothing worse than getting a phone call for a reference check for somebody you haven't spoken with for 10 years, right? Or a period of time where you can't remember much. People looking for references really need to be mindful of, do I have a relationship with this person, and can they truly speak on behalf of what I am good at, the value I'm trying to deliver? Otherwise it's not very effective. So it's, in your case, I would offer to do it, I guess, but I would question the value, and I would wonder whether or not there would be somebody in a better position to do it.
Yeah, because I truly want the best for this individual and for everyone. So it's not like, and it doesn't cost really anything on my end either. I just want it to be effective, and I'm not sure that was an effective approach, and I'm not sure that my referral would be all that effective as a result. So you want it to count, even if it's not taking much of your time. You want it to count.
Yeah, it's one of those things where really, in a perfect world, if you've got a set of references that you've maintained a relationship with, that would be ideal. And then when you're in an actual competition for a position, you're calling them up and you're saying, "Hey, I'm having an interview for the following position. Here's the profile, and here are the things I like about it." And then that way you can actually speak directly to the prospective employer about what it is that this person might be a fit for.
How about because you see it all the time. How about looking for opportunities, big announcement in your profile? Is that good, bad, indifferent? Is there an alternative way to say the same thing?
Yeah, I think you have to. So the two most important pieces of a LinkedIn profile, in my opinion, are the headline and the summary. And in the headline is where you often see that seeking new opportunities or something like that. And we have to keep in mind that, this is a digital tool. It's an online tool that is searchable. And it's almost never going to happen that a recruiter is going to jump on LinkedIn and search for the term seeking new opportunities. And so if you can come up with something that speaks to the service that you deliver, I help whatever company do whatever, right? I solve a particular problem. Deliver some kind of message that gives an outcome or a result. That needs to be in your headline, and then give a little bit of supporting detail in the summary, and be mindful of the fact that people are looking at these things on mobile devices these days. So how much value can you get as high up in that summary as possible?
Any final advice, Rob, that you'd like to leave for our listeners, or any topic that we haven't covered through our conversation that you really want to make sure that we hit?
My thing with change is expect the unexpected, right? And be prepared, anticipate, because we all watch the news. We see what things are happening out there in industry. We know it's the age of automation and AI and other things having, coming in and disrupting. Disrupting is kind of a buzzword these days too, but disrupting industry. So look at that and think about where the future needs might be and how your skill set might slide into some of those future needs. Those are the things that are going to help you not only survive but thrive in the future of work.
Yeah, expect the unexpected and plan. I always tell my kids the worst time to look for a job is when you have to have one. The best time to look is when you already have one, because you can think more clearly. You're not in desperation mode. And you can plan for whatever change may be coming much better when you have the luxury of being employed, as opposed to, I don't have a job, I have no income, and now what am I going to do?
Far better to be proactive than reactive. And to that point, I would say too, don't be afraid to jump off the hamster wheel, because most often, not even most often, all the time, when people make a change, it always works out well.
Well, Rob, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Before we get out of here, can you let people know where to find you or your work, or if there's any special cause that you'd like to mention?
Hey, we're talking about LinkedIn, and that's a place where I spend some time. So if you want to look for me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect with you there. forgeaheadcoaching.com is the website. And that's probably a good place to go too, because the rest of my contact info is there. So that's probably the best you can do to get a hold of me.
Again, Rob, thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, John. It was great to chat with you.
You as well. And okay, everyone out there, you can listen to True Chat podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere that fine podcasts are found. For Business is Art on True Chat, I'm your host, John Umstead. Again, our guest has been Rob Deptford. He's the founder of Forge Ahead Coaching. Thank you all very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Business is Art. Be the change.